Welcome to the She Would Know podcast,
where curiosity meets expertise. Welcome back to the She Would Know podcast. I'm Shayna.
and I'm Chelsey, and today's episode is going to be great.
Hopefully.
I get to be the interviewer. And
I'm
the interviewee.
I'm in the hot seat today. I've never been interviewed on a podcast, so I'm a little nervous.
Don't worry, I'll make it easy for you.
You better.
So how are you doing? What's going on this week for you?
This week, I'm still transitioning back into real life, and last week I was still in Ireland, and it's been a bit of a rough transition just because of the fact that my son is waking up like sub 6 every day.
First number is 5. It's not okay.
It's not okay. Even 6 o'clock. And I mean, maybe it would be one if I wasn't still a little bit jet lagged, but also my daughter, if given the choice, she wouldn't wake up till like 8:30. So it's like I have 2 kids who sleep way different schedules. And if I try to wake my daughter up that early, she will be a nightmare. So it's like I don't really have the option to put them on the same schedule right now. And he won't sleep any later. And then he's cranky by noon, and so we're all just cranky.
Oh, no.
How was your week?
My week is good. This is my last week of maternity leave. And I'm pumped about it. I'm ready to go back to work. I really do like my job. I'm a therapist, if anyone doesn't know what I do.
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, and you're transitioning slowly back in. It's not like you're going to be working every single day.
Yeah. I'm working 2.5 days.
Yeah, that'll be manageable.
Yeah.
It's like the perfect amount of time to feel like your own person again, but still have the balance of like being with your babies and having a little bit of free time, quote unquote.
Yeah. Even just like driving to work with no kid in the car.
Oh, it's the best.
Will be great.
Yeah, my commute is 30 minutes when I do go to work, and I don't mind it at all because I just get to listen. I get to listen to my book without someone yelling at me to turn on Blippi, and I just get to think my own thoughts for a minute.
Yeah.
It's the best de-stress time.
Yes. I was listening to our podcast on the way to dropping my daughter off at daycare the other day, and she was so confused. She was so confused. She was like... She thought I was on the phone, and then, I don't know, she was really confused. It was really cute.
Yeah, I showed I pulled it up, just like the little cover photo, and he's like, that's you, Mommy, and that's Chelsey. And I'm like, yeah, it is. Good job, buddy. I couldn't listen to that episode with him in the car, but yeah, I think it's just kind of fun.
It is really fun. Well, do we have any She Would Knows?
She should know.
She should knows.
How many she should knows?
I've been keeping track on my phone. Let me look on my list. Oh, okay. So for all my people who fly Allegiant, there's a Facebook group for Allegiant coupon codes. Just
really
look up Allegiant coupon codes Facebook group. So that everyone needs to go join that. And also, if you buy your ticket at the counter at Allegiant, you save $22 a ticket.
I thought things were more expensive at the counter. That's why they tell you to book online beforehand.
If you buy it at the counter beforehand.
Oh.
Not like the day you're flying.
Oh, okay. So you have to go to the airport.
Yeah.
That's so weird.
It is weird, but you save the processing fee, which is $22 each way per ticket. Which I think if you're buying one ticket, might not be worth it. But if you're buying tickets for your whole family, that would be hundreds of dollars.
That's smart.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a Facebook group for everything now.
There is. And I'm part of the Facebook group, and no one chats about anything. It's literally just people post coupon codes.
Those are my favorite ones.
Yeah. Everyone stays on track. So everyone go join that Facebook group. Maybe we'll put the link to it in the show notes.
Sure. Why not? We'll just link everything in the show notes.
Just promote it. And then, yeah, if you're in Arizona, there's special times that you can go and buy your ticket in advance. So in Arizona, it's Sundays from 12 to 1.
That is such a small window.
Such a tiny window, but if you're a penny pincher, it would be worth it. I don't know.
All right. Get you out of the house. Okay. I do have a She Should Know. So if you ever need to like scan documents for something, you don't need a printer. You can scan them. Well, if you have an iPhone, sorry, Android users, you can scan documents with your Notes app and the Files app on iPhone and then email them or do whatever you need with them.
Game changer for everyone under 30 who doesn't have a printer.
Well, yeah, I don't think I've ever used my actual printer for scanning. I don't even know how, like I know how to scan, but I don't know how to get it on my computer.
Mm-hmm.
But when we were in Ireland, everything's going back to Ireland, forgive me. We had a flat tire and I have to submit all of this paperwork to my credit card to get reimbursed for it because we didn't get insurance through the rental company. And so I use my Notes app or my Files app to scan the documents so I can email them or submit them like as a PDF version because they don't take JPEG to my credit card company.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's super helpful.
It's amazing. iPhone thinks of everything.
They really do. I'll never be able to quit them.
Yeah, me neither. Although my sister has a Google Pixel and it takes amazing photos.
They take really good photos. I don't know what iPhone is doing with their camera quality because I got a new iPhone last year. I think it's just the 15. I don't know what number we're on, but I don't think that's the newest. Mm-hmm. And my husband still has a 12. And I feel like his camera takes better pictures than mine does.
Oh. Did yours have mine has the 3 cameras in
Yeah,
there.
so I don't have the 3 camera, so maybe that's why. But you would think the newest version
would just take the best one.
Would still just take better photos.
Yeah, yeah.
But maybe not. Maybe I made a mistake.
We need to get Steve Jobs on and ask him.
Isn't he dead?
Oh. Yeah, I think he is.
I think it's a new Steve.
May he rest in peace.
Actually, I think his name's Tim, the guy who's in charge of Apple now.
Oh, yeah, he's the former CEO of Apple.
Did you ever watch the Steve Jobs movie?
He died in 2011.
Yeah, it's been a minute.
I'm obviously not up on pop culture.
Okay, she should know that Steve Jobs died in 2011, if you didn't know that.
Oh my gosh, that's embarrassing. Well, let's jump into our episode.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yep, as ready as I'll ever be.
Take a deep breath. You're going to have a vulnerability hangover after this because we're talking about how you got diagnosed with ADHD as an adult.
Yep.
Okay. Well, what I'm curious to know is, I've known you for a year, and I never really thought that you had ADHD.
No.
So what made you think you had ADHD?
So, I'm glad I'm the one editing this this podcast so that I can cut out things. Hold on, I'm not even on the right list. So, no one ever would guess that I had ADHD. It's not something I ever thought of about growing up. I think the only time I even considered it was I worked in outpatient psych for a couple years as a medical assistant between my first degree and my nursing degree. And just for fun, I would take the little diagnostic assessments. And one of those was the ADHD one. And so I took it and it was yeah, you might meet the criteria for ADHD. And I was like, oh, that's funny. Whatever. And I just didn't think anything of it because I had always been pretty good at school, especially college. I wasn't hyperactive. I have 2 siblings, younger siblings with ADHD, and they kind of fit the stereotypical impulsive, yelling out in class type. And that was never me. I was more quiet as a child. I read a lot of books. I kept to myself. I didn't really get in trouble. So I didn't think of anything of it really. So fast forward to being a mom. I had my son and, baby brain, like every mom has. And I would get really frustrated feeling like I couldn't do as much as I did before having kids. And I got pregnant with my daughter less than a year after having my son. So it was whatever. I'm just back at having baby brain. I'm pregnant. I was working full time. I had a baby. Of course, I'm going to be all over the place and not be able to be the same as I was prior to kids. And then I had my daughter and I was a little over 1 year postpartum and I still could not get anything done. I felt scrambled all the time. I always felt like my brain was going a million miles a minute and I had all of these things that I wanted to get done, but I just couldn't get things done. Even around the house things. Before I had kids, for me and my husband, I had a meal plan system that worked for us. But post having kids, even knowing the system that I had, I could not execute that system. And it was really frustrating for me on top of all the other things that I felt like I couldn't get done. And I love being a mom, but I don't always feel fulfilled with motherhood. So there were other things that I wanted to pursue and that I would try to pursue, but I just could not finish them. Like I just could, like the execution wasn't there. And it wasn't until I saw this post from someone that I followed, let me pull it up. Her name on Instagram is Debt Free Mom, and I just love her content. She's a mom of 4, and she posts like personal finance content, which I love, budgeting. And she posted that she got diagnosed with ADHD, and she shared what made her seek diagnosis. And I read it, and I was like, wow, that's exactly how I feel. I can think about the task and know that I need to do it and have the time, but then I just could not execute it. Having multiple trains of thought in your mind at one time apparently isn't normal. Being extremely distractible apparently isn't normal. Like trying to focus on one thing and then getting distracted. Even if I'm in a room where multiple people are having conversations and I'm talking to one person, I have a very hard time focusing on what that person's saying if other people are having conversations around me. Like I just can't. It is very frustrating for me to try to have conversation with someone in a room with other people, even just listening to them, because my brain is like trying to hear whatever else is going on. And then, not under like time blindness was another big thing that I didn't know that I had until my husband would point it out, because I would mention like, oh, well, yeah, like that happened yesterday. And he'd be like, no, that was like a week ago. And I'd be like, oh, or it'd be the opposite. And that would frustrate him because I just didn't have any concept of when things happened or when we talked about something or how long things were taking. And ultimately, I wasn't doing well mentally. There were a couple months last year, so this was 2023, where I just completely kind of shut down. I got really depressed and I had to tell myself to not do anything. So obviously I took care of my kids and I kept them alive, but I couldn't think about things. And my coping mechanism, or the way that I shut off my brain, is by reading, which looking back throughout my life, that is a pattern that I've held. Like as a kid, as a teenager, reading was always my go-to as far as trying to turn my brain off, to help me sleep, to help me stop feeling anxious about things, is going to books. So during those 2 different months, which were a couple months spread apart, I probably read like 20 books those months, just because I had to turn my brain off and stop thinking about all of the things that I wanted or needed to do, because I just couldn't cope with the fact that I could not execute them.
Yeah, would that put you into like a shame spiral?
It did, very much so, because for one, I just for my self-worth, I like to be productive and I like to feel like I'm getting things done. Like I feel happiest when I am productive and accomplishing things. That's why I like going to school. It's why I like working. And being a mom, you don't really have anything concrete that is like, you accomplished this today. It's well, yeah, I kept my kids alive, but unless I'm like potty training and they poop in the potty, like I don't even have a check mark. I don't have a sticker to check off for being a mom. And so I just felt like every day was Groundhog Day and that I wasn't accomplishing anything. And I just felt like my life was a mess. And I was really upset all the time.
Yeah. So that led you to seeking a diagnosis. And what was that? What was that like? You kind of shared how it affected you day to day. And it seemed like, that was plenty of evidence to go and look for a diagnosis.
Yes. So what eventually led me to, aside from seeing those posts where I'm like, oh yeah, ADHD maybe, is I heard a podcast. I don't even remember who it was, but they talked about how ADHD can present differently in women. And that was really the catalyst for me being like, okay, yeah, this probably is what I have. You should go seek diagnosis. So I went to a psychiatrist and I didn't really know what my goal was starting out, but I wanted to know if it was what I had or if I needed to seek other options, because I do have other health issues. So maybe that could have been contributing. So I went to a psychiatrist and he did, to meet any sort of psychiatric diagnosis, you have to meet the criteria. And for ADHD, it was like, did you have these symptoms as a child, like under the age of 12, I think? And then have you had these symptoms, a certain number of symptoms for the past 6 months? And so I was able to meet the criteria for ADHD, but he kept trying to test me for bipolar, which is fine, but I don't have bipolar. And the difference was, in that case, bipolar is very much like you have depressive and then manic episodes. And the reason he thought I maybe had manic episodes is because I told him how I would get really excited about a project or a venture, and then it just like I wouldn't continue. And for me,
but that sounds like it was hyperfixating.
Yeah,
it was
hyperfixating versus mania. And so like with mania, it's like a little more, I mean, you're not thinking, right?
Yeah, you don't sleep. You don't
eat. Like, you're very impulsive. Sometimes you're spending a lot of money and all these things. Whereas I was really not impulsive, and I was really excited, and I put all of my energy into this, but it was very thought out. Like, I had a business plan. I researched everything, and then I would stop. And then I was like, oh, no, this isn't what I want to do. And I would switch to something else. And I would feel bad about myself because it didn't work out. And I spent all this energy and time and whatever. And then it didn't work out, and I would feel frustrated. And so he was like, so you would get depressed. And I'm like, yeah, but I wasn't depressed. It was just like the frustration of this isn't working out. I wanted to do this thing, and I thought it was a good idea, but it ended up not being a good idea, and I'm overwhelmed and whatever.
Yeah, and self-loathing is a really common symptom of people, or maybe it's not a symptom of ADHD, but more of like a comorbidity of ADHD.
Yeah. So it wasn't depression. It was just, it was more of like a situational depression. And doing more research, I found out that it's really common for women who have ADHD to be misdiagnosed with bipolar disorder, because they have that pattern of, oh, I'm really excited about this thing and I'm going to do it. And then they have troubles with either executing or following through, and then they fall into more of a depressive state. So that's what my doctor, he did that twice. I think I went and saw him twice, and he was like, did we do this questionnaire? And I'm like, is it the bipolar one? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, yes, we did. I don't have bipolar. There's nothing wrong with having bipolar, but I just know that's not what I have. So as far as official diagnosis with ADHD, he had me take a test, which is called a QB test. And I like going into exams knowing what to expect, and I had no idea what to expect. So I couldn't really prepare for this test, which was really frustrating. And I go into the test, and they have you sit at a computer, and I thought it was going to be a question and answer, multiple choice, whatever. I'm like, I got this. I'm a good test taker. So it wasn't. So I sat down, and they put this thing around my head, and then behind the computer, there was like something on the wall. And they're like, you're just going to look at these different shapes, and there was going to be, I think it was like a square and a triangle in different colors. And every time, I can't remember, it was something about a repeating pattern I would like have to click. And so I think it took about 10, 15 minutes. And every time a pattern happened, you were supposed to click the button. And so afterwards, we got my results, and I guess what it was doing was testing three things. One, it was testing your impulsivity. So if you clicked before the pattern happened, that kind of indicated you were impulsive. It tested your hyperactivity, because the thing on your forehead was being tracked by whatever was behind the computer. And so if you're moving around a lot and you're like fidgeting, it tracked how hyperactive you were. And then it also tracked your attention. So if you missed a pattern, then it would indicate that you weren't paying attention. So I ended up scoring really high on hyperactivity and really high on inattentiveness, but not on impulsivity, which kind of surprising for hyperactivity, because I wouldn't say I'm a super hyperactive person. I do fidget a lot, and I do, like, especially if I'm in an uncomfortable situation where it's like, I don't know, I don't want to be here, which I did feel that way for the exam, where it was like, I didn't know what to expect, and I was just like, a little anxious. I was fidgety, and the attention one, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I see that, how I like kind of zone out and I would miss things, but scoring really low on impulsivity was not a surprise at all, because I've never been an impulsive person. I'm always like well thought out. And I think when people think of ADHD, they often more think of the impulsive part, which is consistent with what I thought of ADHD, like with my siblings. They were very impulsive as far as like spending money or like in a classroom, like getting up and shouting. And that wasn't me at all. We are joined by little baby boy. So if you hear baby coos in the background.
He doesn't want to be alone right now.
No, he wants to be in on the fun.
Okay. Yeah, we took a break because the baby woke up. But you were telling us how you got diagnosed.
Yes. So I took that QB test and it showed that I scored on hyperactivity and inattentiveness. So he's like, you meet the diagnostic criteria. And I was interested in pursuing and getting medication because I'd already suspected for a little bit that ADHD was my diagnosis. And I had been trying to kind of fix things myself and be like, okay, I have a little bit better of an understanding of what's going on in my brain. Like, can I overcome this on my own? And it wasn't working. So I did want something to help me.
So what did that look like in your day-to-day? Like a day taking care of your kids? How was it different on medication versus not?
So I didn't take... Let me think back to that time. Because now my kids go to school and I don't take the medication every day. Honestly, when I have my kids at home, I don't take any medication. So with the stimulant medication, you don't have to take it every day to be effective. It is a like shorter acting, even if you get an extended release, it only lasts for like maybe 12 hours. So on days that I don't take it, I don't have any like lingering effects. Whereas if you take the stimulant options, you do have to take it every day and have it build up in your system. So during that time, hi, baby boy. So during that time before my kids, so like October to November or December, when my kids were at home full time, that's when I was still trialing the non-stimulant one. And we were trying to kind of going through the different medication options. So I honestly didn't find success for a while. So it's really hard for me to compare. I'm trying to think back.
I think that's the big hurdle that people go through is sticking with it when medications aren't working.
Yeah. And it was very frustrating because, I mean, on one side you have the fact that you have to go to the doctor each time to be seen, to get a new prescription. And that's usually like a month in between because they want you to try the medication for a certain amount of time. I was also dealing with other health issues. And so I was trying to coordinate between two different doctors, like medications, making sure that nothing was and it just was a really frustrating time in general. And then I had to deal with my insurance, who didn't want to fill prescriptions as quickly as I was trialing new medications. So it was like, there's just a lot of hiccups as far as trying to get the medications that I needed and like even try them to see if they would be effective. So with having my kids home, I would say the biggest difference was like probably like during nap time. I felt like I could focus on something, or if my husband took the kids out of the house, I took the medication, then I was like, okay, I'm able to be a little bit more effective. I wasn't as like indecisive about like, okay, what project should I start? It was kind of like okay, this is what's most important and this is what you need to focus on. So one thing with ADHD, I mean, the biggest struggle that you have is executive function, which involves a lot of different aspects, some of them being just like processing speed. So like how quickly you can like process the information, your short-term working memory, like impulse control, and then focus. I would say my biggest struggles are the processing speed. And I've noticed that throughout my life and in different situations. Like even when I'm having arguments or discussions with my husband, it's like it takes me a minute to kind of understand my emotions and how I feel about things, which now I recognize as a symptom of ADHD, where before it was just like frustrating for both of us because he would want to have conversations about things and I would be like, no, I need time to understand how I feel about this before I can talk about it. So that's something I struggle with. Short-term working memory, so much. I just thought I was stupid for a long time, which I know I'm not. Like, especially like school-wise, I've always done really well in school, but my short-term memory is terrible to the point where it's like, is there something wrong with my brain? Again, that was one of the reasons why I was like, do I just have baby brain? Because people would tell me things, or I would say I would do something and I would completely forget it. And now I have systems in place to kind of help me overcome that. But that was something that was just mind-blowing once I learned that that was a symptom of ADHD. Impulse control, never really had a problem with that. And then focusing, absolutely. Even a couple days ago, I hadn't taken my medication that day, or it was like late enough in the day that it had worn off. But my mother-in-law was showing my kids these little memory games where it's like a little controller and you have to press the pattern. And they were doing it. And she gives one to me, or like my son gives one to me, and it's like, oh, let's see if your mommy can do it. I missed the first thing in the pattern. Like, my brain just, I cannot focus on things very well. I just miss things a lot, which it is what it is. So with, where were we going with that?
So when you're taking medication.
So when I'm taking medication, it helps that a little bit. But as far as having my kids home, one thing I recognized last year was that even as much that medication helped me focus a little bit more, I still take a longer time to process things. And when you have little kids around, toddlers, I had a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old at that point, you don't have that time to focus on stuff because they're always pulling your attention or something's changing and you need to redirect. And for me personally, that redirection and that interruption in whatever task I'm trying to do, it takes me a long time to get back on track or shift to a new task. So I realized that if I wanted to do all of the other things that I wanted to do, having my kids home with me full time wasn't going to be realistic. So that's when I kind of made the switch, or when I made the choice to go back to work and put my kids in daycare or quote unquote preschool 3 days a week so that I would have more time. And that has probably been the biggest game changer for me, because I have more time in the day that is uninterrupted by children to get stuff done and give me the space to take the time that I need to get stuff done.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you feel like now that you are able to be more productive and you have a little more, sounds like you have like more time freedom, like you can control your time more instead of time just like moving on.
Yeah. So I definitely have more time freedom, which I'm extremely grateful for, because it's helped me like mentally, like just, having the freedom to do things that I want to do. But what else did you want? No.
That's okay. I have another question for you is how has getting treated for ADHD impacted your relationship with your husband?
It's been really helpful, mostly because I understand myself more, which helps him understand me. Mm-hmm. I have the most wonderful husband who's just understanding and is down to do whatever I want, pretty much. Just like, okay, that's fine. He's great at communication, but I didn't understand my brain or why I felt certain ways or thought certain things or couldn't do things. And because I didn't understand myself, he couldn't really understand me. And that caused some tension. But now it's like I can explain to him, like, okay, when we disagree about something or whatever, I need time to process because of this. And then he's like, oh, okay, I understand. Mm-hmm. Or like we would be really frustrated because he knows that I'm capable of doing stuff, but I couldn't get stuff done. And so he would be frustrated that things were getting done around the house when I'm home all day long. And so was I. And we just didn't understand why. Why wasn't I getting stuff done? And it's not that he was frustrated with me, like exactly, like he understood, but it was just like we don't have an answer as to why. Because in his brain, it's just like, oh, I see this task, I get it done. Or I see this mess, I clean it up. Or I move this and I get it done. Whereas in my brain, I was literally seeing everything everywhere, and I could not do one thing.
Yeah.
So now getting treatment and changing up our lifestyle a little bit, I am getting more things done, which is helping just our overall family life. But ultimately, just like knowing myself better has helped us have better communication about things.
What was the timeline of when you were like, okay, I want to go to a psychiatrist, until you felt like it is like the ADHD has been managed? Like, do you feel like it's managed now?
I no. I think that's probably one of the biggest frustrations. Honestly, that was one of the hardest parts about getting the diagnosis, was like, I was really hoping it was just like a baby brain, or like something that was like, oh, yep, you just need to do this and you'll get fixed. So, because when I think about, I mean, to answer your question, the timeline was, I would say it was last June that I started thinking that I needed to go see one. I think I finally saw someone end of August, and it wasn't until October that I got the official diagnosis and started getting treatment. And then it was even a few months more. I think like it was maybe March of this year that I finally got on a dose of medication that works enough. But in order to explore like more treatment options, I would have to go trial more medications, which I'm not really interested in, because we would like to grow our family, and you can't be on ADHD medication to do that. Yeah. And so I just don't really see the point in like trying a bunch of medications. I'd rather just like, this works well enough, stick with it for now until we're past that point. So I know how I want to answer this. I need to think about it. So basically I kind of had to compromise and just be like, okay, I have something that works well enough, but I have to rely on systems and giving myself a lot of time. Basically, I had to slow down my expectations and kind of make that mental adjustment in order to just, feel a little bit better about myself. Because like I said, I did not want to have ADHD. I didn't want to accept the fact that this is how my brain was going to be for the rest of my life. I wanted to go back to before. Even though I've always had ADHD, before I had a lot more time and space.
Your life was more manageable.
Yeah, my life was more manageable. I did not have children. I did not have anyone else really relying on me to get stuff done. Like,
your sleep and your schedule were more predictable.
Yeah, it was more predictable, and just, I mean, now I can recognize like, okay, you had all of these systems in place, and you gave yourself all of this time to adjust between whatever activities I was trying to switch between. So it's like I had all of those things set in place before, not even realizing that I need them. But I mean, I knew I need them for me, but not recognizing why I needed them.
Yeah, you were adapting. So if you have ADHD or some other type of, thing under the umbrella of neurodivergent, like, a lot of times, there are like, you feel like you have to hide parts of yourself, or you feel like you never fit in. But it's not that you don't fit in. It's just the world wasn't created for, our normal society.
Yeah.
Wasn't created for people who have ADHD.
Yeah. And that, I don't know. I started, once I finally got the diagnosis and I was seeing like my algorithm just switched to a lot of ADHD content, I was honestly like just super frustrated by the word neurodivergent. And not that there's anything wrong with that. And obviously that is me now, or has always been. But it was just kind of like, I just always felt like it was an excuse. But now it's like, okay, no, I know. Like, my brain works differently. And I can recognize that now in the past. But I don't know. It's just frustrating to accept it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because again, I want to be as productive and as capable as, I mean, obviously I don't know what the rest of our lives look like on social media, but it's like I have these expectations of what I should be able to accomplish, and I cannot do it.
Yeah. Or at least you can't do it in the way everyone else does it.
And I can't do it on the timeline that I want to. I have to make a lot of sacrifices on that front, or just like I have to lower my expectations
Yeah. Would you consider yourself a perfectionist?
Yeah. I think I remember my friend and I would always joke about being lazy perfectionists. And because it was like we would always put things off for the last minute, which is another like ADHD thing where it's like, oh, I'm super productive at the last minute type of thing, which I am.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like yeah.
So what else do you want to tell us about your journey? And then I'm curious to know what advice you have for other people.
So I would say, so I know I mentioned that medication hasn't, like, I wouldn't say my ADHD has been managed, but some things that I've done to help.
Oh yeah, I was going to ask you the skills and pills. Like usually that's like what it takes to manage ADHD, both skills and pills.
Yes.
What are the skills?
So my goal for ADHD with my doctor, or what I tell him, is that I don't want to be completely reliant on medication, but I want medication to help me put in place the systems and routines that I need to be successful. So now that I have the medication and I'm able to focus a little bit better, I've been able to kind of create some systems and routines that on days that I don't take medication, because I just feel blah. Like I don't even want to have motivation or focus, but I'm still able to continue things because I have those systems in place. Another thing for me is that I have to write everything down. Short-term working memory sucks. So even though for normal people, you might be able to do something 20 times and it be a routine, I still can't do that. I have everything in my phone to remind me to do stuff, even as simple as filling up my pill boxes. I use TickTick, which is the best app ever for ADHD people, I think, because it's really simple. I have that in my phone. I have routines even for self-care because I don't remember, like, what's my self-care routine? If it's only once a week or every 2 weeks, like that's not frequent enough for me to remember what I do. So writing down everything and then creating just reminders in my phone for me to do stuff has been really helpful. Putting my kids in school has been really helpful. That's definitely been the biggest impact, just to help me have more balance in my life. Cycle syncing has really made an impact because, I mean, it's not something I ever really paid attention to before, but understanding, like, as my hormones fluctuate, so does my motivation and my energy levels. So when I know, like, post-menstrual phase, I'm going to feel a little bit more motivated and energized. And so that's when I should schedule things to get done. Like if I want to clean my house or get a bunch of things done, like kind of, batch stuff for that period. Whereas my luteal phase, I might feel a little less motivated and like need to slow down or have things pre-scheduled and pre-planned where I just have to check things off instead of come up with ideas. Another thing I do is I just give myself more time in between things.
So when you say you schedule time between things, what does that look like? Like you wouldn't go to the grocery store and then go to a doctor's appointment right afterwards? Or do you mean like on a more global scale?
No, yeah, not scheduling time, but I don't even know. Like if I was better, I would probably have different days that I would focus on different things, because my biggest struggle right now is I feel like I have too many different things on my plate and it's hard for my brain to switch between them. So for example, I have my job and that's like, okay, I go to work, I have my uniform on, like I am in nurse mode. I don't have any other distractions because I'm there for 12 hours. This is my job. And I have a system for that. But then on the other days where I don't have my kids, so the days that I'm trying to get stuff done, it's like I might switch between trying to clean or thinking about podcast stuff or doing school or needing to go grocery shopping or whatever. Like there's so many things that I have a hard time, like still even now on medication, I have a hard time switching in between them. So maybe if I was better, I would have a specific day where it's like, okay, I'm only going to focus on this or this or this. But right now, like,
is that called time blocking?
Time blocking, or like literally just picking a day where I focus on different things, that might be a little more helpful, because I still feel not quite as productive as I wish I would be. But there's just so many things to do.
It's so true.
Yeah.
It's hard when you're, kind of multi-passionate. And even just a mom, like you were saying, like grocery shopping and cleaning your house and taking care of family. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a lot of things all to do.
So, I mean, the biggest thing I'm trying to do is just like give myself grace and also slow down my expectations as far as timelines for things go. Because I'm someone who's like, okay, I want to accomplish this ASAP.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I can't. And I'm trying to be like, okay, it's okay if things take longer than you think they should. Because it'll get done eventually.
Yeah. Yeah. All the important things always do get done.
Yes, they do. And I'll make time for them if they're still important to me. And if they're not important to me in 6 months, then whatever. It's okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, honestly, just giving myself grace, stopping comparing myself to people online, and taking help, which I'm not great at, but just being like, okay, it's okay that you can't do this. Paying for things. I don't like paying for convenience because it's like I'm capable, but it's okay to get help in those ways. If it's just one more thing that you need to do, take it off your list by paying someone else to do it, or getting your groceries delivered, for example. I don't need to spend 30 minutes in the grocery store. I can just have it delivered. And that gives me a little bit more time to either focus on another task or switch in between tasks.
Yeah. And that's really hard. And it comes with like a level of privilege to be able to, pay for things to be more convenient or whatever it is. Save time, the mental space.
Yeah. Which is something I wish I could afford even more of. Like if I had the funds, I would have a housekeeper. I would have a private chef, because meal planning and prepping meals, that takes up so much mental energy for me that it's just overwhelming.
Yeah, it takes so much executive functioning to be able to feed a family. And then if you care about nutrition, like that's a whole nother level of it too. Because it's one thing to just feed everyone Dino Nuggets every day, but
which is
not that there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah, that's kind of where we're at. It's like I cannot think. And like so sometimes I feel guilty because it's like I am doing other things, like working on a podcast and posting on social media sometimes. And those things are not important overall, but my kids' nutrition is. However, they are important for me to feel sane and the happy mom.
Yeah. Yeah.
So my kids get some vegetables and fruits here and there. They're fine, but they love Dino Nuggets. They'll live.
Yeah, my husband loves Dino Nuggets.
Yeah, so does mine.
My husband makes a Dino Nugget sandwich.
What? What is that
like a Chick-fil-A sandwich or something. Like he puts like 5 Dino Nuggets between 2 pieces of bread.
Oh my gosh. I thought he was using those as the piece of bread. I'm like, what does he put in between?
Like a little piece of cheese or something.
Yeah.
That'd probably be good though. So it sounds like you're in a pretty good place now. But what does the future look like? Like when you're, out of your trying to have kids or deciding, and you can be on a medication that you might be more effective. I don't know. Like what does the future look like with treatment and managing it?
Yeah. So right now we're planning on having another kid. So I'm expecting to have to go off of medication, which honestly scares me a little bit because while I don't take it every day now, I do have it to fall back on. So it's like, okay, if I feel like I'm falling out of my routine or I can't really get a leg up on my own, I have the medication to kind of help me get back to a spot where I'm able to get stuff done. So I am really nervous, honestly, about that. And I've talked a lot to my doctor about the anxiety I feel around that. And so really right now my goals are to accomplish the things that I need to do without medication, which involve like going to school. Like that's something that I really need medication to help me with, especially with everything else that I'm going on. Like I don't have all day to dedicate to classes like I did before. I just have, little blocks of time where I can get stuff done. So accomplishing that and just creating systems in my home. Again, like my timeline for things is being extended a lot longer than I was expecting. I thought after like 3 months, it's like, okay, I'd have a system for this and this and that, which I don't at all. But creating those systems so that once I do go off medication, I have that to fall back on because it's already created. I don't have to worry about the whatever. I just have to follow the steps that I made. And then, just understanding that things probably aren't going to look the way I want them to for a while, especially when having another baby and being postpartum. Like, I'm just going to have to let things go, like lowering expectations. And then after that, I mean, now that I know what medication kind of works for me, we'll be able to like jump back in pretty quickly. And I think I will want to continue exploring medication options. But right now I'm at a good baseline that I would feel comfortable going back on this and being like, okay, I know what to expect medication wise, and I know what it can help me with and what it won't help me with. But I mean, long term, life changes, circumstances change. I can't really predict the future or how I will respond, but I'll be able to always have an understanding of like, okay, you take a little bit longer to process things. You might not remember everything. If your kids tell you something, you need to write it down. Like, oh, mommy, I need this for school. Write it down right then. Even bringing diapers or wipes to preschool, I put a reminder on my phone because I won't remember. So just knowing what crutches I need in order to be effective, that's something I'm just going to have to use for the rest of my life.
Yeah. Yeah, and maybe crutches isn't the right word because it makes it sound like it's a bad thing.
Well, okay. I mean, we use crutches in the hospital, so I don't know. It's just a tool to help you.
I feel like it insinuates that you're healing, and that means that you're broken, but you're not broken.
Yeah.
Have you read the book ADHD is a Superpower?
No.
Because there's a lot of really cool things about ADHD. Like, they're usually more creative and very compassionate and empathetic. And do you feel like you have some of those qualities?
No. So that's what's interesting because, like, my siblings, especially the two that have three, I think there's three of them that have ADHD, they are a little bit more creative and all of those things. And, I mean, I would say that I am empathetic and compassionate, but
yeah, you are.
As far, like, I don't know, I see a lot of people on the internet with ADHD and the struggles they have, I don't exactly relate to, especially, like, in the finance world. It's like, oh, well, because that's a lot of the content I consume. It's like, okay, if you have ADHD, you probably are really impulsive with your money and this. And I'm like, okay, I've never had that.
Yeah.
At all. So sometimes I do find it hard to relate to other people with ADHD because maybe it's just my type isn't represented well because one, it's probably underdiagnosed.
Yeah.
If you're like me and no one ever suspected because you just read books a lot, like that's your coping mechanism for ADHD. That's not very, typical.
Yeah. And I'm really curious to know, and you might not have an answer to this, but how the conditioning of being like an oldest child and, the way you were raised and being a perfectionist, how that maybe has taken away some of the creativity. Like maybe if you didn't have that conditioning, if maybe you would be or have some of those other traits.
No, that's actually really interesting because I remember watching the Barbie movie with my husband and having just like a crisis of self because it made me realize like I really didn't get to be a kid.
Yeah.
Because of family circumstances and play and creativity it's just not something I was able to do. I was very responsible. And actually, I listened to a podcast today, the Good Inside with Dr. Becky podcast, where they talk about ADHD in children and how teaching responsibility is something you need to do with children to kind of help with, impulse control and whatever. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe that's why I don't struggle with impulse control. It's because responsibility was forced on me from such a young age in so many different ways. Like I just I couldn't be impulsive. I didn't have space to kind of make mistakes in a lot of ways. So it's actually really interesting because, yeah, the creativity was kind of pushed out of me.
Yeah. And if you feel like you always have to be responsible as a kid or you don't always feel... It's hard to be creative if you don't feel safe.
Yeah.
or comfortable, and it's uncomfortable for a kid to be responsible all the time.
And I would say responsibility is a big part of my identity, which is why I struggled with the fact that it's like I couldn't get stuff done and I wasn't being effective and productive like I have been praised for my whole life. It was like, okay, now I'm a mom and I have even more responsibility and more opportunities for getting stuff done and being effective, and I can't get any of them done.
Yeah. And I can see how that would impact your view of yourself. And ingrain the I'm not good enough thing, which is like the core of perfectionism.
Which no one was saying to me. It was all just self. Like, oh wow, I can't do any of these things, so I'm a terrible person.
Yeah. So what's it been like? I mean, have you made progress on that? I mean, because you're not a terrible person. I think everyone knows you're not. But what's been like the internal reworkings of that?
There's been a lot of them. I mean, one, just being around or switching from being a stay-at-home mom to being a part-time working mom is just shifting, like, okay, you're not a bad mom because you can't be at home with your kids all the time. And that was a hard one. One, because I'd always dreamed of being a stay-at-home mom. Like, that was kind of what I was expecting. I was expecting to thrive, and I didn't. So having to accept that and kind of embrace it, like, okay, I'm a happier person. My kids are happier at school, which is the most important. Like, we all have a happier balance and like family dynamic because of that change. Kind of embracing, I know I've mentioned like, it's like I don't even like to think about the fact that I have ADHD, but also just like embracing that my brain works differently and kind of laughing at those circumstances, especially with my husband, where it's like the time blindness thing, where it's like we just kind of make fun of it now, where it's like, okay, well, it's frustrating, but let's make fun of it. Or the fact that I have piles all over my house, because that's a very ADHD thing where you just create piles to try to like, one, things need to be visual. Think out of sight, out of mind is on another level in my brain. If it's not right in front of me, it doesn't exist. So I would have piles around the house, and now we just kind of joke about my piles because that's how I keep things organized, and he knows eventually they will get moved away or put somewhere. So just, kind of embracing that my brain works differently, taking it lightly, not being so hard on myself, which is still a struggle. It's just, it's how things are going to be. Luckily, I have a great partner and family and friends, so we're like, oh, it's okay, whatever. But I don't know. It's always going to be something there that I struggle with and have to accept.
Yeah, I think the self-acceptance seems like is a huge piece of it. Yeah. So what advice would you have for someone who thinks that they might have ADHD or has ADHD?
I would say, one, talk to a doctor. And then if you don't like that doctor, go to a different one. Because some of them, I feel like ADHD, there's been kind of a spike of it, or especially on social media. Maybe that's just what I consume. It's a lot of people getting diagnosed late in their life. And so
it's kind of big in like pop psychology right now.
Yeah. So there might be reluctance from doctors to be like, oh yeah, that's what you have. But honestly, like getting the diagnosis, even if you're not trying to pursue medication, it's just a relief to kind of...
Yeah, like you're not crazy. These symptoms actually all make sense and fit into something.
Yes, because it is a medical diagnosis. You do have decreased levels of dopamine in your brain. Like your brain does not work quote unquote normal. So go to a doctor, they have therapists that specialize in ADHD, and even just speaking with them to help understand the way your brain processes information and helping you kind of adapt your life to ways that'll be more effective for ADHD, that can be helpful. Give yourself a break. Because I think especially, like I said, seeing people on social media do all of these things, especially without having the context of what other help they have in their life, it can be really discouraging to see. So give yourself a break. And let's chat in DMs.
Yeah, and when we say that, we actually, I mean, we're just two normal people. Like, you actually can DM us and we'll respond to you.
Yeah, and you might have to DM a couple times because sometimes I'm really bad at responding. That's also another thing where so going back to my childhood for a minute, out of sight, out of mind is real. My parents are divorced, and I would go to California every summer and spend the summer with my dad, and I'd be away from my mom for like 2 months. Mm-hmm. I would maybe talk to my mom one time. And I didn't realize that wasn't normal, mm-hmm. but it's like when I wasn't with my mom, I didn't think about my mom. And as I got older and like I build friendships with people in one spot and then I'd leave, I had a really hard time maintaining those friendships. And I thought I was just a bad friend. Mm-hmm. But for me, it's like, I don't think about you, and it's not because I don't care about you. It's you're not right in front of my face.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it just like, I just would neglect those friendships because I didn't like reach out because it wasn't on my mind. And that's something that, going back to my childhood, it's like, I didn't even talk to my siblings for 2 months because they weren't around. Mm-hmm. They were back home with my mom. And where was I going with that? Oh, the DMs. So anyways, so it's like I'm really bad to responding to messages, to phone calls, or just like reaching out to people because if you're not right in front of my face, I'm not thinking about you. Again, not because I don't love you or care about you. It's just
your brain doesn't like pull up that file.
Yeah. Almost. Yeah. I want what's the Inside Out movie? I want an Inside Out movie with an ADHD brain.
Yeah, that would be so interesting.
Because, I mean, recalling information is whatever. It would just be a tornado in there all the time. So, yeah, it's like if I get a message and I don't respond to it right away, or I don't mm-hmm. put a note in my phone to respond, like I will forget.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is really frustrating. So, don't hate me. And don't feel bad about yourself if you're the same way, because
it's all pretty normal.
It is just what it is.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
So do you have any favorite resources for learning about ADHD or ones that have really helped you? People to follow on Instagram?
I wish I did. I actually do follow a couple ADHD people, but I just don't connect with their content. Like mm-hmm. here, the one just pulled up, Divergent Coach Kelly. I try to follow people, so no. Ultimately, the answer is no. I probably need to work on that.
A resource that I share with my clients a lot is the website Attitude Mag, like ADD, Etude, and then it used to be a magazine, but now it's a website. It's awesome. There's like, you can do, a little self-assessment quiz, and there's a section for ADHD for kids, ADHD in adults, ADHD in relationships. It's a really awesome resource.
That's really smart. Oh, I would say, I mean, this isn't general, but things that have helped me just like in my personal, again, Tick, the app, that's my productivity to-do list, everything app, just having everything in one place to write it down is really helpful for me. And then we haven't even finished it, but what's it called? The
Fair
Play. Doing that with my husband has been really helpful because I'm able to have everything written down, because we would have discussions about the mental load and like all the things I do, but I could not recall the things that I do. Mm. So being able to like have these cards that say everything and being able to show him like, hey, these are all the things I do. It's helpful for him to visualize and me to visualize what my responsibilities are or were, and that. So I really liked that tool.
Yeah, and for people who don't know, Fair Play is a deck of cards that has one card for every domestic task it takes to run a family. So there's like 100 cards, I think.
Which, I mean, in general, is just helpful, regardless if you are neurodivergent or not. But for me specifically, when I wasn't able to kind of recall like my day-to-day responsibilities and like what he would ask me, what'd you do today? No idea. Mm-hmm. I was all over the place. So being able to look at the cards and be like, okay, yeah, that's what I do. And show him, that was really helpful. And I'm trying to think what else. I think that's all I can think of right now.
Okay. We'll link that stuff in the show notes.
Yeah.
I really like TickTick. You got me onto that app, and it's awesome.
It's so fun. YNAB for budgeting.
Okay.
And the reason why is because it's very visual.
Yeah.
So you're able to see, like, I mean, I personally just love money and finances, but when it comes to remembering things, and I try to think sometimes, like, if I wasn't interested in budgeting, would this be helpful for the way my brain works? And the answer is yes, because it's all very visual. I don't have to think about, like, oh, what did I spend this money on or whatever. It's right there in front of my face. I'm able to look and see.
I need to try that.
How much money? Oh, it's the best.
Because we'll like make a budget and then 2 days later we just both forget about it.
Yeah, no, it's incredible because everything gets imported. Like all of the transactions get imported and you just assign it to a category. It's very visual and very satisfying. So I would recommend that as well. Basically anything that makes things visual and so you don't have to think about it is something that I love.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, anything else you want to say about your journey with ADHD or advice for other people?
As far as my journey goes, I would say that it is still ongoing. And so this has been a good opportunity for like kind of self-reflection because, again, I don't think about it too much, or I try not to because I don't want it to define me. But I'm also just, I still struggle with it. So even no matter where you're at in your diagnosis journey, like it's okay to be continually struggling. And I might feel differently in a year. And
yeah, we'll have to do an update.
Yeah, I might have different systems in place or whatever. Like I'm still very much a work in progress. And that's probably the hardest spot for me to be anywhere. I like to have an answer and this worked before I...
Yeah, like tie a bow on it.
Yeah, that's where I like to be before I share things. So this is kind of scary for me to do, but I hope that it helps someone because, again, it was a podcast and another mom sharing on social media their experience that kind of helped me get the push to reach out and seek diagnosis. So I hope someone finds this helpful. And
I think a lot of people really will. I'm proud of you for being so vulnerable.
Yeah, hopefully I can edit it in a way that makes sense because I don't even remember what I've said and I feel like I've been all over the place, but such is life and such is how my brain works.
Yeah, okay.
And yeah, if you have any questions, please reach out to me on my Shayna Says account, not the She Would Know podcast account because Chelsey mostly handles that. So I might not see it. But yeah, reach out to me if you have any questions. And if I didn't text you back, send me another text.
Okay. Perfect. Well, thanks so much for sharing all about your journey with ADHD. And let's wrap things up. We appreciate you guys being here.
Yeah. Thanks for listening. If you made it this far, you deserve a medal.
Bye. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of She Would Know. We would love to hear from you. If you have suggestions for topics and experts you would like to listen to, drop a line in the comments or connect with us on Instagram or TikTok at shewouldknow.podcast. If you'd like to support the podcast, please subscribe on Apple or Spotify and leave a review. We would like to give a special thanks to Adam Kump for our intro and outro music. And thank you for listening. Don't forget to stay curious, and we'll see you next week for a new episode.